Buongiorno, cominciamo la nostra chiacchierata, il nostro incontro quotidiano con i maestri di questa Biennale Teatro 2013 ed è un felicissimo ritorno quello di Jan Lauwers, che ormai da 2 edizioni viene alla Biennale Teatro con laboratori, con workshop e con lo spettacolo, è venuto con lo spettacolo indimenticabile per tutti noi, Isabella's Room. Per mesi, dopo lo spettacolo, abbiamo continuato a cantare il motivo principale, la musica di Isabella's Room. Abbiamo tutti il CD, ce lo sentiamo a casa. E ieri sera abbiamo visto il nuovo lavoro, di cui sicuramente Jan Lauwers ci racconterà, assieme a Massimo Marino, collega e amico del Corriere della Sera di Bologna, responsabile della pagina scena di Doppio Zero, docente e autore di un libro importantissimo per noi critici, che è Lo sguardo che racconta, edito da Carocci, un libro che è anche una bellissima riflessione sul senso della critica teatrale. Allora con molto piacere lascio la parola a Massimo e poi naturalmente a voi per parlare con Jan Lauwers.
Grazie, sono molto contento di essere qui, di incontrare Jan Lauwers, del quale abbiamo apprezzato ieri sera a Market Plus 76. E io inizierei da una domanda banale, ma iniziale proprio. Come nasce questo spettacolo? Come si riempie, come Jan Lauwers, l'artista Jan Lauwers riempie un foglio bianco e una scena bianca? Quindi quali sono i passi che hanno portato a questo lavoro? In questo lavoro mi sembra di vedere una caratteristica perlomeno che si ritrovava nella Chambre d'Isabelle, ovvero un rapporto tra luoghi segreti e la loro esplicitazione, un esterno che nasconde degli interni, che nasconde dei cunicoli dell'anima, delle relazioni sociali. E qui abbiamo una piazza. Qual è il luogo più, qual era forse il luogo più chiaro di incontro sociale di una piazza? E quanti segreti nasconde l'intreccio delle vite che in una piazza si incontrano? Allora io poi partirei dal foglio bianco, dall'idea e poi dal modo di realizzarla in uno spettacolo ricco di elementi.
Okay, hello. I'm sorry, I don't speak. Wow, I hear myself here. That's weird. I don't speak Italian, so I do it in English. So the white sheet is, for me, a normal starting point, because as a visual artist, as a painter, you start also from a white canvas. So for me, it's a normal starting point to have to create from zero. Therefore, I am not so intrigued by repertory theater. I sometimes do that. Now I do a workshop around Shakespeare, but when you do Shakespeare, you are, as a director, no longer an artist, I think, but more a man of a professional, a craftsman. I think there are different levels in art, and the real art is starting from zero. When you do Shakespeare, you are a servant of the writer, and Shakespeare himself is then the artist, and you give a comment, or you try to explain to the audience what Shakespeare meant. That's another métier than the marketplace. When I write, the way I work is maybe it's a bit technical, but since we are all members here of the workshop, it's a bit more technical. We are the way I work is very classical. Is the way Shakespeare worked with his group. You write a play for the people you have chosen. So when I write, I know for who I'm writing. And the choice of the group of people you write for is maybe the most important decision. Because you write for the people, you select the people, the selection of the people that can take a long time. In all these years, I made an ensemble. The ensemble of Need Company that you saw in the marketplace is a group where people are working with for 25 years, others for 15 years. There are 3 new members in that group, but most of the people stay a longer time to go very far in what you want to say, what you want to do. So I have a selection of actors, performers, people who are on stage, and I write, in fact, on their skin. And the skin of these actors is the skin of the world for me. So I have the people, I have the characters, and I start writing alone. And when the play is finished, when I think the writing is finished, then I pass it like in a conventional form of theater. You come together, you give the text around the table, and you start reading. And then I stop being a writer and I become a director. But nevertheless, it's different because I'm not a writer. I'm a theater maker who writes his plays. So in the writing, I take a lot of decisions. I can decide who will die on page 10. So that's already a big decision. It's a big decision because it's an ensemble work. Need Company is on stage, and everybody is always on stage. The reason why we do this is that we are a performance group, and there's a difference between a performer and an actor. A performer is somebody. An actor is a machine of reproduction. A performer never reproduces but produces. I'm talking now about the performer in the visual arts. So when you like Marina Abramovic cut herself in her ballet, you do that once, and you do that in yourself. You do that for yourself. And a performer is somebody who produces at that moment something, and is not thinking of reproduction. An actor has to reproduce. I come from the performance art, came into theater, and then the fight we do in our ensemble is to try to find a balance between presentation and representation, production and reproduction. Because of course, the marketplace, we have to play that. Or Isabella's Room, we are still touring that for 10 years. So we performed it 260 times now or something. So there is, of course, a reproduction necessary. But at the same time, the way we work, the fact that I start from a white canvas and the fact that I write for them, I introduce immediately this presentation idea, the performance idea. That means that we have a system in our work, in our working progress, that avoids reproduction.
Ecco, scusa, posso interromperti? Questo è molto interessante. Dettagliare magari un po' meglio il passaggio tra la fase di scrittura che mi pare sia tua, privata, e poi quando questa scrittura incontra gli altri elementi della compagnia. E poi come fai tecnicamente anche a tenere viva la presenza nella riproduzione.
So first, when the yeah, I hear my own translation. That's really weird. So when the text is ready, I invite the people around the table, and that's the first time I give my text to my actors. That's a very delicate moment, and that's the moment where I have the most stress. Is imagine they don't like it. What happens then? So we sit around the table, and to avoid this reproduction idea is that we are, let's say we start on Monday, I give the text on Monday, we read on Monday, but Friday we go into a theater and perform it for 100, 200 people, small theater. there is nothing to reproduce yet, because you don't know the text yet, you don't have the form yet, there are no songs yet, there's no dance yet, but immediately after 4 days reading, you confront yourself already with an audience. And then you stop the work in progress, we go on tour with other productions, and then again we work 2 or 3 weeks. So the rehearsal time is maybe like in every theater, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, but the mental time is spread out over a year. So you have time in between. That's the most, that's the best way to do it. We are not always achieving that level. Sometimes we have to work a month because there's not another possibility, but we try to have a longer mental space. In that way, the performers can think about it and can introduce material. So the selection of the actors is very important, that they know what the difference is between presentation and representation. And the second what they have to do is they have to know what an image is. Every performer makes a sculpture, however he is also exchanging energy. And this is something I miss a lot in more conventional theater, is the exchange is one-dimensional like that, and I try to open it up by introducing different centers at the same time on stage. To do that, I force everybody to be on stage all the time. And that's maybe an interesting element, is that the best performers in the group will never count the amount of text they have. They know the show is 2 hours and they have to be there 2 hours. An actor, when he has no text, he doesn't know what to do. A performer thinks, this text is over, now I do something. That's now a bit ridiculous, but it is true that the moment where the people who are not speaking, like for example in the marketplace, the last part, the winter part, the plumber has died and he has no function anymore. So what he does, being a skeleton, that's his choice. He plays for himself in 30 minutes all the Inferno of Dante. That's his option. And because there is really a trust between him and me, and we work already 10 years, I can allow him to do that. He trusts me and I trust him. And then there is a realm opening up. You have to do 20 minutes and there is nothing for you in the script. And then you have to listen very carefully what the others are doing. She's always here. Isabella Sum is a very good example. It's almost a soliloquy of Vivian de Monk in the middle sitting doing Isabella. But if the others are not listening, the show is over. You have to do that together, even in a passive way. It has to be an ensemble work. So all these elements provoke a situation where a performer or an actor tries to defend or find his freedom. A good actor, a good theater work, you see that at the end the performer destroys the authority of the director. And when that is happening, then you have good theater. That's very difficult. It's very difficult, but it's very necessary. In my way of working, my way of working is really focused on the humanity of theater. I try to avoid as much as possible video and all this technical stuff to come to the necessity that's the performer on stage. So I write for them in an almost conventional way. It's like Shakespeare wrote for his actors, Beckett wrote for specific actors. That's a very traditional way to do. I'm always impressed that nowadays a lot of contemporary writers don't make theater. Contemporary playwrights, they don't make their own theater, they give it away. And that is something that I don't really understand.
Faccio un'altra domanda. Il performer, dicevi, distrugge l'autorità del regista, ma non mi sembra che scalzi quella del drammaturgo, che comunque è come un supervisore. Noi abbiamo visto uno spettacolo molto ricco, molto complesso, di elementi visivi, di elementi attorici, di ballo, di musica, di immagini, ma soprattutto mi sembra molto denso anche di riferimenti. Questo spazio collettivo, che è lo spazio dell'antico teatro, della tragedia greca, della commedia attica, si approfondisce in questi meandri delle vite personali, che sono tutte rigettate in pubblico, ma hanno una profondità, in alcuni casi nascosti, come nella catacomba sotto la fontana e in altri luoghi segreti. Non so se ti va di raccontare i luoghi segreti tuoi che sono alle spalle di questo lavoro drammaturgico. Io ci ho visto tante cose, un po' Magonni forse, come lontanissimo riferimento, o Dogville, un po' probabilmente anche la grande pittura fiamminga, con questo accumulo e ritorno di elementi che certe volte si ripetono, sono compresenti, come nei quadri di Bruegel e di Bosch, un po' il surrealismo belga, anche ripassato negli ipermercati globalizzati, non hanno più le palandrane e le bombette di Magritte, ma hanno le tute orange o vestiti da 4 soldi. La plastica, mi sembra, ecco, non so se ti va di chiacchierare un pochino su quelli che possono essere i riferimenti artistico-drammaturgici. E poi un'altra domanda che mi piacerebbe, ci sono elementi simili ma anche diversi con altri artisti del teatro fiammingo, da Platel a Van de Kebus a Jan Fabre. Evidentemente delle marcate differenze, ma anche delle cifre e dei colori che tornano in qualche modo.
That's a lot of
questions.
A lot of questions. First, it is when I talk about my. There are a few people that I consider as my masters. When we talk about acting and storytelling, I think John Cassavetes is very important. John Cassavetes, the film director. He is, for me, on the highest level of acting. And he also started with this, working with the same people, to go very far with the same people. When you see Women Under the Influence or The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, of all these great films of Cassavetes, he was so far in advance in acting in cinema, but don't forget that he made in '69 and '68 all these films about men in tuxedos while everybody was a hippie. So it was against his time also. And I think that's important for an artist, to be against his time, to not go into the fashion of the time. So Cassavetes is very important. I learned how to write a dialogue because of him. Of course, I must say, there are not so many people from the older generation in theater that influenced me, because I never saw them. That's the beauty of theater. There is no history. You can talk about Brecht, but we never actually saw it. So it is. I'm not coming out of the world of theater. I never saw theater before I started making it. I've chosen to do theater because I was in the visual arts. I ended up in a narrow street, and I felt uncomfortable. I changed the town where I was living in. I went to another town, and I said, okay, let's take a step back and do some performances, and out of these performances, it became theater. The reason why I started to make theater is that at a certain moment in the performance, as I told you before, you have to do it yourself. If you ask an actor to do something that you want him to do, then you cannot ask an actor to cut in his belly. So there was some in the 70s, no, let's say late 70s, early 80s, it became a bit perverse, I think, what we were doing at that moment. To ask for an actor to run for an hour on stage and you don't do it yourself became for me an impossible situation. So the performance has changed into theater. The reference to Dogville is very obvious on stage. The dog is sitting next to me. I think Lars von Trier is very important. The way he tells stories, the way he writes his plays. I think it's Lars von Trier, is Winterberg with Vesten, the Danish school. I know them personally, and the storytelling of the Danish school is more important than what happens in Flanders, I think. But so what Lars does in Dogville confused me. It's a masterpiece for me. It's a fantastic film, but the content frustrated me. It was too Catholic, and at the end, Grace, the daughter, says to her father, "Kill everybody," and I think it was too depressive. I was confused by that. I said, "How can I give an answer?" So I started to write a long time after I saw Dogville. I never saw it again. To see what I could give as an answer. That's one thing. The fact that it's on one marketplace, that it's one space, is also a classical. Greek dramas, Greek tragedies are also in one spot. It's a very conventional way of writing. I like it. It's Isabella's room, it's the lobster shop, it's the deer house, it's the marketplace. It's always one spot where everything happens. The marketplace is a metaphor for the society, of course. What I try to do in the marketplace is to put all the problems that you can find in one newspaper in one day, you put it in this marketplace. Some people say it's impossible that all this shit happens in that village, and then I think, where are you living, you know? It happens every day, everywhere. So, yeah, I don't know what other questions you were asking. I lost track now. But
qualche altro riferimento chiedevo.
Yeah, but references. Yeah. What can I say? The first theater I saw was Joseph Beuys.
E poi in che rapporti è con altri creatori fiamminghi famosi quanto lei, da Jan Fabra a Van de Kebus a Platella, per esempio, per fare i nomi più conosciuti, diciamo.
Yeah, but okay.
Cioè esiste una scuola, nel senso che tutti avete una cifra che mette insieme vari elementi, con dello spettacolo, la visualità, la danza.
What keeps us together is that we ignore our nationality. I don't think Jan Faber, Van de Kebus, Alain Platel will ever say we are Flemish artists. It sounds ridiculous, but it is. Yeah, I think the work of Van de Kebus is so different than my work, and Faber's work is so different than my work, and Faber's work is so different than Van de Kebus' work. It's very different. It's extremely different, I think, that we come from the same surroundings. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. Do we have to be proud for that we are Flemish? I don't think so. It's a coincidence. So it is. This question is already hunting us for years. And of course I know Wim and Jan and Alain personally very good. I'm a very good friend of Jan, and I think Fabi is a great artist, and we appreciate each other for sure. But there it stops, more or less. It is why we are already so long good, or in all these festivals. I'm always astonished about that. But apparently, people like to put an etiquette on it, like that's the Flemish school. Maybe it's an economical reason that we are cheaper than the Germans.
Quello sicuramente.
For sure. That we had another kind of subventionship system, that you can be fast and move with small groups. So there was an economical reason. I think that is true. There were a few people in Belgium who were visionary in producing our work and to bring it abroad. And also the fact that Flanders is very small, you want to go away. You want to. Everybody speaks 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 languages to survive in the world. So maybe that's also a reason that I feel that in Spain, I feel it in Italy, it's very closed. I see in this festival that the subtitles are only in Italian, and I think it's a shame to have an international festival where there are now 2 languages, for an example. It's easy to do that. But in Spain or in France or in Italy, they never do that. When you go to Flanders, you go to Kunstfestival des Arts.
Sì, c'è sempre francese, inglese e fiammingo.
So it's always like that to cross the borders. We have that attitude. So maybe that is also a little bit a part of what is happening. And of course, if you refer to the Flemish primitives or Jeroen Bosch, I sincerely wonder if you would do that if I would not be Flemish. Because I'm Flemish, you think of Flemish primitives, and you start to, and maybe there's another thing, maybe that's more interesting. The fact that Catholicism produced the best artists, that's a fact, it's a fact. When you go from Michelangelo to Da Vinci, Rubens, Rogier van der Weyden, all these big giants were Catholic. Why were they so good? Because they were born Catholic, and the first image you see is a man who is tortured on a cross. And every painter tries to show the blood as clear as possible. We love this visual suffering. The Protestant artists, they didn't see that. So, as a child, I was more afraid of this Jesus on the cross than what was happening on television, you know. And we don't realize that. But we were born as Catholics with all these images. You go into a church and you feel this massive imaginary world. And maybe that is also part of the influence. And Flanders is very Catholic. And so maybe there is a connection with Bosch, there is a connection, but you can also say that from Italian people. I mean,
Certo.
Posso
Forse è il momento...
Sì, volevo lanciare io un tema e poi naturalmente coinvolgere voi, sono certo avrete delle domande. Il tema che volevo affrontare è questo, cioè negli spettacoli di Need Company un ruolo fondamentale alla musica, hanno le canzoni, però ha citato giustamente Lars von Trier e John Cassavetes come punti di riferimento. Allora, mettendo assieme queste 2 cose, questi 2 elementi, quanto il montaggio cinematografico ha influenzato o influenza, se lo influenza il montaggio teatrale, e quanto l'intervento di post-produzione reale per mettere assieme musica, performer, danza, cambia o rinnova il suo stile.
Yeah, Yeah, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Yeah? I make my own music. I paint. I write. I'm a very restless person. My atelier is a construction. Is a private room where there is my laptop where I write. There is my guitar where I make music. There is a canvas where I paint or I make a sculpture. I only can do one thing 20 minutes, and I'm bored. I go to the other one. So I always create 5, 6 pieces at the same time, which was in the beginning very frustrated. Now I deal with it. But I always dreamed to be Morandi and only paint 3 bottles all your life. I think I would die very quick, but if you can feel peace with that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. But the fact that I cannot do it makes that my work is also restless. To put these different aspects in a play makes. I really believe in a theater that exchanges energy. And I think yesterday it was a nice exchange of energy. I think we worked very well together with the audience. It was very nice. But why I do that, I cannot answer you. I think it's fun also to develop all these different levels. Not in every show we do our songs, but the last years, when we make a show without songs, public is angry. That's also a frustration. As long as we think it can add something, we do it. But it's not on forehand that we say there has to be music, there has to be dance, no. This is very open. There's not, but it's true that we are a little bit in that corner now. Maybe we have to get rid of it sooner or later, but as long as we like it, it's good. And the most important work we do with Need Company is a work that calls House of Our Fathers, and we only do that in musea as an installation, and it's about memory, and it's about presentation. We did that now, the last one we did last month in Hanover, and what we do is we ask a museum to how do you say that? To not throw away the leftovers of an exhibition. The sockles they make or the panels they make to put paintings on, don't throw them away, just keep them for a month, then we take that material, we make a house of it. I put my artwork in it, and then during the hours of the museum, from 10 to 5, 6, let's say, we are in that house and we perform. And all the performers of Need Company go inside, they are there for 8 hours, they don't go out, and they only work with their memory. It's an exercise in memory. I strongly believe that art only exists in memory. When you are in confrontation with the painting, what does it mean if it doesn't go into your memory? So if you leave a museum, do you remember the painting you see? If you don't remember it, it doesn't exist. If you don't remember it, it was entertainment. I think that's a bit the difference between entertainment and art, is that art exists through the memory. And that is the House of Our Fathers, that's where we work on. And therefore, I try to also to play with time in the shows we do, is that we sometimes, for example, the image yesterday with the baker who's standing there like that, and she's just stand there for 3-4 minutes, because this image is so long, it has time to go into your memory. And that's the difference between an image and a border image. I call it border images. Border images are images who stay in the memory. Yeah.
Domande da parte vostra? 1, 2? Ok, iniziamo qui alla colonna.
Sì, buonasera. Io avevo una domanda, che cerco di fare un po' sempre le stesse domande a tutti, mi rendo conto. Allora, io avevo una domanda riguardo la parola e l'uso della parola. Abbiamo insomma già avuto dimostrazione sia dagli spettacoli che dalla chiacchierata di poco fa, anche da quella di 2 anni fa, che c'è un uso non esclusivo della parola, cioè viene usata ma è uno dei tanti mezzi impiegati nello spettacolo. Però questa volta ancora più che in Isabella's Room, la cosa che ho notato è che soprattutto quando si traduce in canto, la scrittura cambia completamente, cioè è come se fosse improvvisamente sintetizzata in una forma più poetica. Quindi volevo capire se era nelle sue intenzioni di autore, ma soprattutto di lavoro di gruppo, se c'era nell'approccio alla parola una funzione anche di consegna di un messaggio. Perché so che insomma, si vede che i temi trattati in tutti gli spettacoli hanno anche grosse risonanze, sia chiaramente personali, per quanto riguarda la memoria individuale, sia di costruzione di una storia narrata. Quindi per capire se questa parola, secondo lei, è in grado di comunicare un messaggio e di raccontare un tempo presente.
Of course, I think that. But if it would be only words, then read a book. So it's true what you say, that there's a difference in the writing when I write the dialogues or when I write the songs. The songs I write directly in English and the story is written in Dutch, basically. So it's also, I can tell you this maybe, it's a question of identity also. Don't forget, I write now, I made maybe 25 different shows in my life that I've written, and I never heard them in Dutch. So I write in Dutch and immediately we translate it in different languages. So my identity, my tool is, my language is Dutch, and I destroy my own language and replace it with different other languages who are sometimes not well spoken, like the way I speak English is not perfect. But I think that is I think it's a necessary evolution. A lot of languages will die, for sure, and nobody will care about it. So I strongly fight against every form of nationalism because it is not true. It's a lie. That I'm Flemish is a coincidence, and I will always be Flemish. Whatever I try, I will be different than a guy from Senegal. And that's very good, but it's not something to be proud of. So the language is a very important tool, but I try to universalize it, that's one thing. And of course, the subtext, the text behind the text, is as important as the text. The text is the first thing. No, the ensemble is the first thing. The people is the first. The text is, let's say, the reason why these people come together then. And then the main objective is to make a show, to make a production, to make a piece of art, a piece of beauty, whatever you want to do with it. The word an actor says is as important as the act himself. If the word takes over the actor, then it starts to float here somewhere. And I think it has to be here. Is that something of an answer? Okay.
Una seconda domanda, qui in seconda fila.
I'm very interested about your carte blanche of the beginning, who is the addressing person of the show, for whom you are writing for, and your relation with Genius Loci, what is the place behind your dramas. So, for example, a very Nordish Flemish place could be Marketplace 76, a very small community. That is just an example. Many Flemish or Dutch or Belgian artists, designers, just naming the most famous like Dis Van Noten, Atelier van Lieshout or Maarten Baas, or in any other discipline, architecture, design, fashion, in my opinion, are reading and treasuring, but also expressing a very big genius loci. Never mind.
A very what?
Genius loci is a Latin word, is a thing speaking about the characteristic of a place, of a really materic, geographic, and full of memories place.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, Marketplace 76 is also speaking about what is a northern village community. So in your way...
But for you, it's a northern village.
For me, it could be what you mentioned before, the fact that you have picked up all the things, the horrible things in a newspaper in a day, and you just brought inside the show. But in my opinion, you are in a way treasuring and expressing in few languages, so not just one, English and French at least, the possibility to translate in an international audience a very detailed and intimate and transposition of a place. Mm-hmm. So I'm very interested about the relation, if it is existing, of the addressing person of your show and a very small community that is part of your tradition.
Oh, this is a difficult question, huh?
If it is real, maybe it's not real. I've seen it, but maybe it's just my craziness.
I'm so sorry, I don't understand really the question.
I'm so sorry too. I'm so sorry. Posso ripeterla in italiano e la traduce anche...
No, but yeah.
Is it possible to see a translation of a very small community somewhere in the north?
To universalize it?
Yeah, absolutely. You are...
Well, that's a big question. Yeah. That's the big question. My experience as a traveler, when we perform a show like Marketplace or Isabella's Room or another one, when we perform it in Tokyo or in Santiago de Chile or in New York or in Venice, the reactions are the same, in the way that the cultural reaction, that's really funny. If you don't know that, you are sometimes really astonished that, for example, the culture of taking an applause is in Japan totally different than in Chile, is different than in Brazil. And if you don't know it, it's kind of silly sometimes. So the way they react on it is culturally quite different, but the way they talk about it. I'm always surprised why all these politicians have so much problems to speak with each other. When I speak with a Japanese person who saw my show, it's not a problem. I'm now very curious because we go for the first time to China. And it's the first time a contemporary playwright is presented. There's a lot of symphonical orchestras and dance groups who go there. But a real playwright is very delicate because there's still the communistic censorship. So now I'm curious how they will react. But it's still, I think, a cultural element that is playing a more important part than a mentality. Because, for example, nudity is forbidden in China. So, okay, if you know that, and you go to a republic where there's 1.7 billion Chinese, you don't say, I'm going to be naked, I'm going to be tough. It's ridiculous. So you know that. But I'm sure you can really talk about the content of the play with every nationality and every continent on this planet. It's astonishingly easy, I think. And there's a difference in an exotic approach and a real approach. The exotic approach is when in the 70s or the 80s everybody was all of a sudden in love with Butoh theater or no theater and nobody understand anything, but that was the total exotic approach, I think. And this is also, it's absolutely true when you go to Japan that There's a lot of elements in this culture that you don't get. Or when you go to an Islamic country, it's different. Of course, for sure, big differences. But when you come to a certain point, it becomes very easy. With theater, you communicate very good with people.
Voglio prendermi l'ultima domanda, se Massimo me lo consente, legandomi a questo argomento. Nei suoi spettacoli c'è sempre un clima di festa iniziale, anche in questa festa macabra che è Marketplace, un clima di festa che si fa a metateatralità, si fa gioco metateatrale, ma che ha anche un'accoglienza molto bella al pubblico, un modo per coinvolgere, per far entrare il pubblico nello spettacolo e in teatro. Allora ecco, volevo chiederle chi è lo spettatore per lei e quando lo spettatore entra, se entra, nel suo processo creativo.
The audience is an unfortunate necessity. You cannot make theater without an audience. If you want to do that, make a painting and put it in your atelier, don't show it. You show things. But in the creative process, you don't think about the audience, or you try not to think about the audience. And so it is, the writing, the creation is a very private thing, and then all of a sudden there is a connection with the public, and because we have this system of center strategy, that means that the center is not longer the center, but all the different centers on stage have an equal importance. This provokes for the audience that you also can choose what you want to see. So everybody in the audience becomes an individual who makes his own story. So you communicate not with a mass of people, but you communicate in fact with individuals. And that's very important for me. Therefore, I changed my way of working more than 10 years ago into more an open way, to destroy the fourth wall and say, hello, we are going to do something. When I say yesterday, we are Need Company, we're going to tell a story, everybody knows that because they paid the ticket already. But you tell it to say, for me then, as a writer and a director, it's just me, it's just you, let's try to do something together. And I think that is also the beauty of theater. The beauty of theater is that it's a space where you can have very profound conversations, even when you think some institutions in theater are too conservative. Shakespeare or Goethe, or when you see Faust, I mean, to be with 1,000 people in a room and somebody plays Faust, you demand a lot. So the public is very intelligent. Otherwise you don't go to Faust. So I think theater is one of the last bastions of freedom, because in the visual art market there's too many market. It's too many controlled, but the theater is made by poor actors, visited by people who can afford maybe a ticket. They think the tickets here are too expensive, but so you try to. It's quite a normal thing, and it's therefore, I think, one of the most interesting art forms. Theater was always at the side of entertainment too much. I think theater is a very important artwork. If a week ago Castellucci was sitting here, this man is a genius. He's a very big artist, but he will never be a name like when he would have been a visual artist of that level. The visual artists of that level are world famous, rich, but whatever. This is not the aim. This is not the aim. But to make theater is a very complex very big work you have to do. You need a lot of métier to do that. And we often forget that. It's a collective work, but at the same time, it's also an individual work. I'm sure that Castellucci works in the workshop totally different with his performance than what I do with my performance or what Gabriella does with her performance. It is totally different because it's a very individual approach. And what we try to do, and that is maybe something that I have in common with Faber or with others, is that we came from the visual art into theater. So as artists, we started to examine theater, to renew it, to say what is inside. That is what an artist does. Okay?
Grazie, su queste bellissime considerazioni io mi fermerei. Grazie a Massimo Marino, grazie a Jan Lauwers e Need Company. A domani.